welcome to Tour of Hainan, stage 4. It's the fourth push for the riders, and can Jakub Mareczko make it a hat-trick? He's on absolutely flying form. And welcome, 192.3 kilometers for the riders today. Chiang Mai to Danshu. What a stage we had yesterday, set up in absolutely perfect fashion by the Willier Trestina squad. Got a little bit of support in the back end from Team Kulz, trying to put their rider into perfect position. Team Andrei Kulik, but well, it was going to be all about Jakub Mareczko in the push to the line. The early points for the King of the Mountains, well, Vitaly Butz has hung on to his polka dot jersey into a third consecutive day indeed, and well, the early break of the day retained, then another move went up the road. It was all action on stage 3 of this event into Chiang Mai yesterday. Beautiful sights and sounds of Hainan, the southernmost province of China, where the conditions not absolutely perfect along the way. The humidity of this event really is something that takes its toll on the riders. And into the back end, Team Ukio trying to get in amongst the leaders, but that yellow jersey of Jakub Mareczko, that distinctive sprinting style, so effective, and he was literally lengths clear and preparing his victory salute with his rivals in his wake. Another stage success for Mareczko. He's on absolute fire at the moment, winning for fun and extending his lead in the overall general classification. All too easy for the 23-year-old Italian at the moment, coming on the back of some great teamwork from the Willier Trestina squad. Well, we look forward now to this fourth stage, 192.3 kilometers, with Mareczko defending that handy advantage, 11 seconds lead over Jon Aberasturi. And Martin Lass has been sprinting well. Ben Hill's been scoring well in the intermediate sprints from the early break. Vitaly Butz leads that mountains classification from 5th overall. Well, the conditions, well, a little bit cloudy and overcast, but it's warm temperatures and plenty of humidity, as you might expect. Well, we're in the northwestern point. Here's just the week's events as we start in the south eastern corner of the island, working our way up towards the north and then back around in a circuitous route. Nine days in total of this event, characterized by sprint stages for the most part in the early part of the week, and then working its way up towards that conclusion at the weekend, when we'll have the Queen stage, the big hills to come. There is one fourth category ascent along the way today, but it's mostly fourth, third, the odd second category ascent before we get to the back end of the weekend. Down the western coast, this is where the Chinese come on their holidays. Plenty of other nations besides. Heading up into the hills in the central part of the island for stage 7, which is going to be a grippy one. And that, in large measure, is going to tell us who is going to win this event overall. By the time we get to stage 9 next Sunday, well, that one will be about defending and something of a celebration in towards an anticipated finish. And that's the circuitous route, takes us on a loop around the island across the 9 days. Joe Hill looking very relaxed. He's done a lot of great work for his Isoe sports team. Anthony Jacobo getting up for 3rd place for that squad yesterday, and that was a good return for all the great work done by that squad. And Vitaly Butz looks relaxed, doesn't he? Indeed, Martin Lass as well, resplendent in the green points jersey. Of course, that's controlled by Jakub Mareczko, but he'll be looking after the yellow jersey. And there indeed is Vitaly Butz in the polka dots, leader of the King of the Mountains competition. Closely fought. Just a couple of fourth category ascents so far, but only 3 riders have scored points. And all 3 riders level on points, but Vitaly Butz is best placed on general classification of those that have won a hill. Jakub Mareczko getting used to having the spotlight on him in Asia. It's a good time for him. He has been winning for fun over the last couple of years. 3rd year with this squad. The Willier Trestina squad have the status, have the pedigree, and they've been justifying that with their performances over the first 3 days. Mareczko 2nd and a couple of wins out of the first 3 stages. 121 riders making their way out of Chiang Mai. Already 12 riders have been consigned to the did not finish category. Lost a couple more outside the time limit yesterday. Most riders making it through into to the bunch finish, but it's been a pretty hectic pace, and that's been taking its toll, particularly on many of the lesser lights. Right from the get-go, the flag comes in and the attacks began. It took a long time for the break to get away at the beginning of today's 4th stage. Plenty of interest and ambition in getting into that early move, but as I say, it took, well, almost 60 kilometers before the early break managed to establish itself. This is what they have to face. 1 fourth category ascent coming right at the beginning of the day. Vitaly Butz taking that one ahead of Ben Hill and Benjamin Pradis. So still just 3 riders scoring the King of the Mountains competition, but Vitaly Butz has got that jersey. He's established a points advantage now. Tour of Hainan, stage 4, Chiang Mai to d'Anjou, as we pick up the live action, the sprints along the way. Alexander Prévart has managed to take the 2nd sprint of the day. Martin Lass, who's well placed overall, pinched a few points and a few bonus seconds early on in the day, and that's moved him just that little bit closer to Jakub Mareczko, your overall race leader. Lass sitting 3rd overall at the moment. Mareczko handily placed and watching with interest as his riders and other teams indeed try to close down the early break of the day. 3 riders still in there. As we pick up Alexander Prévart, took that 2nd sprint of the day at the front here. The imposing figure of Ulises Alfredo Castillo Soto, Mexican rider with Jelly Belly powered by Maxxis, and the altogether more diminutive figure of Sven van Looyk, the 28-year-old Dutchman. Travis Samuel was there as well for the H&R Block PCT squad, the Canadian, 23-year-old Canadian. But he's been left to his own devices. And now just a little bit of activity amongst this group, as it seems that there's not exactly complete coordination between the riders, as Castillo has gone on the attack and Prévart's feeling the pinch a little bit. No surprise to see on the front of the peloton, it's the Willier Trestina squad. They've won 2 of the first 3 stages. They lead overall. It's up to them to do the job. Delco, Marseille Provence are also putting their blue jerseys to the fore to try and assist on closing down this breakaway group, which has never had a lead of much more than 3 minutes, and it's hovered between 2 and 3 minutes pretty much throughout this stage. But it's been a pretty hectic pace. Already down just inside 40 kilometers to go. It has been hot and heavy throughout the first 3 days into the 4th day of action. It's a similar situation. The Bardiani CSF squad put the ridings close to the front yesterday at the back end. They haven't brought any sprinting talent. They just want to maintain a watching brief and make sure that they keep their riders out of trouble in the closing stages. So the 4th stage, 192.3 kilometers, coming down into the final. We're into the back end of this stage, and now it's the business end. The cars are trying to move up and move ahead. 3 riders still remaining from the break. It's the Mexican rider from it, Jelly Belly powered by Maxxis, Ulises Castillo that is driving this move on and trying to hang on for as long as possible. Can they hoodwink the bunch and hang on for what would be a famous victory? Remains to be seen. Alongside me to run the rule over the riders once more is Magnus Backstedt. And Magnus, it's been a hectic pace again for the 4th day in a row, taking a long time for the breakaway to establish itself. A lot of riders with good legs still.
Yeah, I think with good legs, but also the fact that we had a King of the Mountains very early on, and also a sprint relatively early on in the stage, and there's clearly a bit of a battle going on between 3 riders for the King of the Mountains. So it seems like those teams are happy to commit a certain amount of work to make sure that their riders are getting the opportunity to sprint it out certainly for the King of the Mountains more than the intermediate sprints. And with that, the pace gets driven up. There are lots of riders who want to attack and want to try and establish an early breakaway, and when the break doesn't go until 60 kilometers into the stage, then that means that it's been quite a hefty battle to make that early move. And yeah, it just drives the pace up. There's also a fair amount of wind around today, so that seems to be helping the riders today.
Yes, it certainly helped them in the early stages, and then they sort of looped around to the left and heading back towards Danshu, heading back east, and it will be sort of a little bit of crosswind, cross-headwind, and headwind into the closing stages, which there could be a factor in there in the way that it ends up.
Yeah, certainly depending on the vegetation around as well, and how sheltered the roads are. But like I said, the final couple of kilometers are absolutely dead straight, and on a fairly big wide road as well. So it looks like it's going to be a bit of a cross-headwind sprint today, and that can certainly present its own problems, and especially when the finish is completely lacks any technical element whatsoever. You know, it'd be difficult to keep a high enough pace to string the bunch out, and that's when you end up getting swamped. And we're talking about yesterday in commentary, that big washing machine that riders just moving up, and then they find that they don't really want to be on the front, but they want to be near the front to try and drift back into the peloton a bit. And it's so easy to lose position coming into a finish like that.
Yeah, we can watch for that a little bit later on. We'll certainly talk about it, but very little technical efforts or difficulty at the back end, but plenty of tough racing between now and then. We're going to get the first commercial break out of the way. Back to us after these. Well, they're not hanging around on stage 4 of the Tour of Hainan, heading towards Danshu. They've sliced another 30 seconds off the advantage of our now 3 breakaway riders from the initial 4 that went out front. Took a long time for the early break to establish itself. It wasn't that early. It was a good 60 kilometers into the stage. And the Willier Trestina squad, aided and abetted by the Delco Marseille Provence team, are pushing on to try and close down those 3 riders, and also make it perhaps as difficult as possible for the other sprinting squads. Here we have the riders up front with Prevar, the Ukrainian rider with the Colts, the Ukrainian Colts squad on the front. The Dutchman, Sven van Looy, diminutive figure. Second on a stage of Tour of Qinghai Lake this year, it was Sven van Looy, and he's going well, but I'll sense that he's feeling the pinch a little bit. Certainly the most aggressive rider in this group in the last while has been the man at the back who's generating the big watts, Ulysses Alfredo Castillo, Jelly Belly powered by Maxis. As we see the legwork being done at the back of the field, Carrera Costa of the Hainan Jilin cycling team, made up almost entirely of riders from outside the Hainan province, indeed outside China. And he's on bottle duty. And you know that a race that announces that you pick up ice and water before the start, and they have a particular time for that, is going to be a hot one.
Yeah, it definitely has been very hot here over the last couple of days, and certainly goes to show there with the amount of bottles that they seem to be going through. And also a lot of the riders carrying a fair amount of salt showing on their jerseys.
Yeah, lots of heat and humidity. Of course, salt is a big part of this region, isn't it? The mining of salt, and salt has, of course, played a huge role in Chinese history. It's an area around here that they've more than 1,000 stones cut flat on top, which are used to evaporate seawater. Good chance we might see it on camera at some stage. They're always very proud to show it, part of the history. And yeah, plenty of salt deposits among the riders as well. Sven van Looy, not perhaps cut in the traditional mould of a Dutch rider. They tend to be very tall and good for the crosswinds. Van Looy plying his trade in Asia of late, ex-Park Hotel Valkenburg rider. And the Ukrainian Alexander Prevar. And that gap is coming down, and it's been managed and controlled nicely. But for all that, there's not that far from the finish, and still a minute and a half to close down. You would imagine well within the compass of the bunch, but they're going to have to work for it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a minute and a half is not too difficult to take, and certainly with the activities that we had earlier on in the stage as well, those riders that are out there now, they would have had to work really hard to get away, and with that, probably they are feeling the effects of a relatively long stage again. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one in terms of how much those riders out front in the breakaway have got left in them, and also whether Tristino are going to want to continue riding and doing the lion's share of the work. Although Delco Marseille seem to be quite happy today to contribute to the chase, and I mean, they've been going really well, I think, Delco Marseille so far, and in terms of certainly looking after their sprinters coming in towards the finish. Yes, yesterday they didn't get it 100% right, but yeah, they've certainly looked really quite well organised.
Yeah, 7th place finish for Martin Lass yesterday. He has got a 2nd from stage 2 and a 6th place finish on stage 1. So great consistency there, 3 top 7 finishes. He's wearing that points jersey. He's sitting 3rd actually in that competition at the moment, but handily placed. 2nd indeed in the points, but well behind Jakub Mareczko in relative terms. And but Martin Lass, watch out for that green jersey, because Delco Marseille Provence clearly up for it today. They want to propel him into perfect position. As I said, did grab some bonus seconds a little bit earlier on in the day. Lier Trestina, well, they're happy to go on the front because they know that in Jakub Mareczko they have a rider that can deliver. His stats in recent times are exceptional. He's taken a total of 15 stages of the Tour of Tahoe Lake over the past 3 seasons. And in the last couple of weeks alone, he's got 10 wins in 2017. 9 of them have come in Asia, and 8 of them have come in the last 18 days. So clearly he likes the back end of the season. He likes his visits to Asia each of the last 3 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, Mareczko's been a solid performer throughout the year, and certainly I think he did a couple of really good rides in the Giro. But if he's coming into form so well at this time of the year, then it might be an idea to sit down and have another look at the drawing board and maybe tweak a few things in terms of how he's setting up his season and when he's starting to train and so on, just to get that bit more of a form earlier on in the year.
Yeah, he did stage win in Tour of Langkawi at the beginning of the year, and then a bit of a fallow patch, but he did come up with 2 2nd-place finishes in the Giro, and they were both behind Fernando Gaviria, who's a pretty reasonable sprinter, and on both occasions just ahead of Sam Bennett. So he put some pretty good sprint, Greipel, etc. behind him. So he has potential, hasn't quite delivered on the biggest stage yet, but there's a sense perhaps that it's coming. Still young.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think also looking at how Mareczko is sprinting, I think he requires a certain type of sprint, probably a
straight one.
A straight one, and something that isn't too scrappy, if we can put it that way, where it's a bit more sort of well organised. Although when the last couple of days here now, he's managed to pick, and certainly yesterday more so than anything, really managed to pick his way through the bunch pretty much on his own, surfed the wheels and picked the right wheels, and had the gas to finish it off.
Did a pretty good job then. The gap down to 1 minute and 15 seconds at the moment, just over 30 kilometers left, looking good for the break. Just inside 30 kilometres remaining on stage 4 of the Tour of Hainan, as the 3 breakaway riders, it was 4, Travis Samuel left to his own devices as the other 3 plough on regardless. 1.25 minute advantage. It's coming down steadily, and at this rate of capture, well, they'll certainly be retained well before the finish. But these riders are pressing on, and they're going to make it as difficult as possible for the bunch as we head down towards Danshu City. And in time-honoured fashion, they've got some of the local residents out to well, not exactly sure what that says. I wonder, does it say Danshu? It just describes the name of that school or football field, or maybe someone can tell me. A little bit of assistance now coming in from the Ukiah squad. No surprise, they have been well to the fore, and the man who took the first stage, bested once more by Jakub Mareczko on yesterday's stage. Jon Aberasturi is sprinting well, and the Willier Trestina squad, and particularly Mareczko, will know that they need to be on their game to make sure that Aberasturi doesn't come up to pinch that one again. It's the intriguing head-to-head with Martin Last trying to get involved as well, and new player as well, Anthony Jacobo, coming in for Isoway yesterday with a great third-place finish. So plenty of riders starting to show consistency in the sprints and start to believe that they can come up with the big wins, so it's likely to get increasingly difficult for Mareczko as the week goes on.
Yeah, it definitely will be, and they're obviously starting to understand how the Willier Trestina team operates, and also what type of sprinter Mareczko is. So of course you'll try different things and try different ways of setting it up, and I think what they need to do really is let Willier Trestina do more work and leave them be a little bit more patient, and leave them really sort of completely empty the tanks, and to the point where Mareczko hasn't got anyone left to do any work for him. And I think helping them out on the road during the day is not necessarily the best way forward for the other teams.
Leave them out there?
Well, leave Willier Trestina to do all the work and don't actually contribute to the chase. But then again, if you're keen on sprinting and you believe, like Aberasturi here, he's beaten Mareczko once, he believes he can beat him again, so it's more of a question of, yeah, I just want to sprint. You know, I definitely want to make sure that we have that sprint, rather than shuffling all the responsibility onto Willier Trestina to do the work to bring the break back. Although they're more than capable of doing so.
And as you said yourself yesterday, the psychological implications of putting your team on the front, the pressure that puts on your sprinter, can also be a huge benefit. So it's you sort of have to weigh one up against the other. The assisting Willier Trestina may be, you know, in the debit column, but in the credit column is the fact that you've revved your sprinter up by going to the front and putting a few watts into the chase.
Yeah, I think that's got a certain amount of to sort of be how should we put it? I think some sprinters definitely prefer to have it in that way, where they got that pressure on them, and you know, Aberasturi definitely seems to be that kind of a guy.
Well, Tadahiko Kwababara is the DS for Team Ukiah, and he will have weighed up his options and decided that maybe it's best for his squad if they put that bit of pressure, ramp it up on Aberasturi, and say, come on, you've done it once, let's do it again. For all that, though, it is fundamentally and in large measure the Willier Trestina squad that is doing most of the chasing. 1 minute and 21 seconds. They've throttled it back a little bit, and I think they were probably aware that rate of capture, they were going to get the group back a little bit earlier than they might like. So it's a balancing act, trying to make sure that you do keep those breakaway riders on a relatively short leash, and make sure that you're going to get them back, but by the same token you don't take them back too soon before and then all hell breaks loose, and suddenly there's the potential for late breakaway attempts that might just change the character of this event. At the moment, the peloton all very safely and securely at that 1 minute 21 seconds deficit, with Sven van Looy as the road surface leaving a little bit of something to be desired at this moment, but also it's a rolling countryside here, not big mountains by any means, but as the road drags up, Sven van Looy looks like he's full of fight. He's just having to throttle back a little bit across the top of those little rollers. Make sure that he can bring riders of the caliber of Ulysses Castillo with him. Peloton behind with the great work once more for yet another day being done by Alex Turin. Did a huge amount of legwork yesterday. And again, it's the pattern of Marechko putting his team on the front, but he's not surfing in the wheel. Some riders like to stay right on the back of their own team, you know, 7th or 8th position. Other riders like to go back into the pack. Think of the likes of Peter Sagan. He's happy enough just to sit in the middle of the bunch and take the pressure off a little bit. It has its advantages, it has its disadvantages.
Yeah, there's always a certain disadvantage to that, to sitting back in the peloton. Obviously, there's a slightly higher risk that you get caught up in a crash or something like that. But it also saves so much more energy if you're inside of that bubble of riders.
Jelly Belly powered by Maxis riders, massing at the back of the bunch. They're not stressed at the moment. They've got further fish to fry later in the week. They'll be thinking about GC. At the moment, they haven't really shown any great strength or ability in the sprint finishes, and that's anticipated to be the case this afternoon as the riders head towards Tanshu at the end of 192.3 kilometers of racing. Stage 4 of the Tour of Hainan is going to pattern at the moment, with the Willier Trestina squad continuing to set a difficult tempo, and it's just one that's keeping those 3 riders up the road relatively close at hand. The locals coming out to support this event, as they always do, in great numbers. As we get closer to the finish line, you're going to see plenty of people out to support this 12th edition of the Tour of Hainan. It's been running since 2006 when Sergei Kolesnikov took the victory, the Russian rider. And the most recent victor, of course, Alexei Lutsenko of the Astana squad, taking the victory 12 months ago. Not back to defend his title on this occasion. So Dossard #1 being worn by Marco Marinesi, the Bardiani CSF rider. Bardiani have come with riders who have ability in the mountains, and that Italian pro-continental squad will be looking to battles aplenty next weekend, Friday, Saturday in particular. Great opportunities for the GC riders to assert their authority. At the moment, it's one about the sprinters, isn't it? It's Jakub Marechko with the lead overall. It's 2 victories and a 2nd place from the first 3 stages, propelling him to an advantage with the time bonuses, of course. 10, 6 and 4 on the line. Jon Aberasturi sitting 2nd overall, 11 seconds behind Jakub Marechko at the moment. So if Marechko makes it through to the finish line, regardless of how it plays out, he should, all things working out for him, should be able to hang on to that overall lead through into a 5th stage. We pick out Marechko in the bunch. Got a couple of riders for company. As always, Jurgit Jupa is riding shotgun for him. He's just sitting behind Marechko and making sure that there's no problems, no difficulties. And the local school kids have been given a little bit of time off to come out and cheer on the riders in the Tour of Hainan, and that'll give the boost to the breakaway riders in their efforts to try and hang on and stay clear. Big time bike racing making its visit once more to this southernmost province of China. This island, if you look at a map of China, it's just a little blip, isn't it? It looks relatively small, a little bit bigger than Belgium. And a population of 9 million makes it the 28th most populous of the 33 provinces of China, I understand.
Well, there we go.
And
it's about the population of Sweden living in this part of the world then.
It's a remarkable country, isn't it? It's just so vast, so enormous. Hainan with its very own cultural character. It detached, of course, from mainland China. And under entire control of the People's Republic of China since 1945. It was occupied by Japan during the Second World War. It's been the subject of conflict throughout the generations. And now it is very much a tourism destination. There are significant industrial concerns, and agriculture, of course, very important in this part of the world, but tourism is something that they're keen to promote in Hainan. And
well, some of the beaches that we've seen, certainly in the opening stage or two, has been pretty spectacular, so I can see why.
Yeah, down the south of the island in particular, as we'll be working our way back to a little bit later in the week, is particular tourism destination, as indeed is Danshu, is one of the biggest cities on the island. And a popular destination, and it is the destination of these three riders up front. A quick update from the ticker, just over a minute advantage now for Alexander Prevar, Sven van Looy and Alfredo Castillo on the front here, powering along for Jelly Belly, powered by Maxis. Well, it's inside a minute advantage for the three riders up front, and we're just under 4 hours of racing as we head towards Danshu on stage 4 of the Tour of Hainan. And this rider coming up, Nazar Bika of the K-Look cycling team, assisted back into position by Jin Wang. So clearly he's a rider that they want to look after for later in the week. Nazar Bika, the puncture of late, got a front wheel change without too much difficulty, and he's safely back in the peloton, which is being led at the moment, as you might expect, by the Willier Trestina squad. And the road's a little bit damp. The late afternoon rains have been making their visit to this region, as Sven van Looy has a little look around to make sure that his breakaway companions are still with him across these drags. They're certainly the strongest of the riders whenever the road goes up, even by the smallest amount. An impassive Alexander Prevar showing absolutely no hint of the effort that he's making. Sven van Looy as well looks well within his effort and composed, and indeed too Ulysses Alfredo Castillo looks like he's in control of his emotions. The legs might be screaming, but they're not showing it on the face. 48 seconds advantage, peloton. And perhaps they've heard you, Magnus, because of late it really has been left pretty much entirely up to Willier Trestina to do the chasing.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. I mean, they are so strong at the moment, and probably the biggest team that we have here in this race, together with Bardiani CSF. So, I mean, I would definitely leave those guys to do the work, and then try and there we go. Wow. Fed some food.
They're all relaxed about that, and clearly got plenty of food available, so it's good to see the Jelly Belly powered by Maxis. What were they Jelly Bellies available to them? Taylor Sheldon clearly in happy mood ahead of the battle to come, down to inside 50 seconds for the leaders out front. So this one is being winched in nicely and at a good rate, and you've got a sense that even the three breakaway riders up front, for all the effort that they're making, that they might just have a little bit in hand for that late push remains to be seen. And there plenty of communication between the Willier Trestina riders up front, making sure that they're not going to drag this one back too soon. 18.3 kilometers to go though, so we're getting down into the point where they need to be just that little bit careful, but it's still well within their compass, and you've got to maintain concentration, haven't you? And that's just a little bit of a scary moment for one of the Team Ukyo riders, and he seemed not to be too perturbed by that. I
think right now the guys on the front here certainly want to just throttle back a fraction and hold that gap, because 48 seconds isn't an awful lot of time, and you don't really want to catch the riders outside of the final 10 kilometers, certainly not if without a large amount of teams contributing to the chase. If there were 3 or 4 teams actually riding on the front, then I'd say, okay, fair enough, you can catch them with probably 12-15k to go and still keep control of the bunch. But if there's only one team left to ride, then keeping the breakaway out there just a bit longer, trying to catch them somewhere between 5 and 10 kilometers out, is a better option. So I just want to be a bit careful with how hard they're riding on the front at the moment. It's so easy to just get that bit excited. You see the time gap start ticking down, and you're still feeling good, so you just keep on tapping along, and you think, I'm not actually going all that quick here, but by the time you realise you're only 20 seconds behind the breakaway, and all of a sudden that opens up all sorts of possibilities for counter-attacks and the rest.
Alexander Prevar at the back of the group here, the 27-year-old Ukrainian with the Colts cycling team. Indeed, he's been with them on and off since 2011. And he's got a win this year. Horizon Park Classic was a Ukrainian 1.2 one-day race on the Odessa Grand Prix last year. And 4th on GC in his national tour, the Tour of Ukraine, this year as well. The standout results, clearly having a good season at 27 years of age. He's coming into the good years and his strongest years. He's gone out front on stage 4 of the Tour of Hainan, and doing a solid job for the Colts cycling team. Their excused duties in chasing. Andrzej Kulik is the man who'll likely be sprinting for them later on. He was 8th across the line in yesterday's 3rd stage. Now we see Marechko starting to move up, so he's got one rider in front, one rider behind, with Yuga Jupa, the rider, sitting just behind the yellow jersey. And Giuseppe Fonzi, one of the great names in world cycling, is the man sitting just in front of him.
Yeah, Jupa has done a good job over the last couple of days in looking after Marechko and taking him up to the front. Doesn't seem to have the raw sort of speed and power at the moment to take him all the way into the finish, but certainly manages to sort of shelter Marechko from the wind and just drop him off near the front, or close enough to the front, with sort of 500-600, maybe 700 meters to go, and from that moment on, Marechko seems pretty capable of making his own way to the finish line.
Yes, it's something we discussed and have discussed in the past. It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? It's big, wide open boulevards, very little road furniture, no deviations in the. It's just a straight line all the way to the finish. That sounds like it would be the least complicated sprint you could imagine, but actually, it often turns out to be the opposite way around.
Yeah, I certainly think it's a far more difficult sprint to manage and certainly to keep control of the bunch. When you got corners and lots of accelerations and braking points, then all of a sudden you're braking, sort of, if you're coming out of a corner and you're accelerating, you're making that rubber band effect of the whole bunch. And then the next second you're on the brakes again, and as long as you as a team to manage that nicely and sort of pan out across the road a bit, blocking the different apexes, go through the corner and then accelerate again, it just means that we've got a dog on the road there. Let's hope that he stays away from the riders.
Well, a lot of frightened beast there as well, not least the dog, but luckily jumped back in. It's always a concern, isn't it, dogs? If you happen to be coming to a bike race, if you bring a dog, it's not recommended, but if you do, make sure you keep them on a lead. It's always a concern, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is, and it's never nice when you do come down because of an animal of any sort.
Through the left-hander, we're heading down towards Donchu as the crowds have come out in force to witness the riders on stage 4 of the Tour of Hainan and seem to be enjoying the fare that's presented to them. The 3 riders in the breakaway group now just half a minute lead. Surely they're not going to hang on. 15 kilometres, well, they'll plenty of time to close that one down, and it's been a solid job once more for Willier Trestina. They're happy at their work at the moment, the Italian Pro Continental team.
Yeah, of course, when you got a sprinter who finishes the job off well all the time as well, whether he's winning or finishing second or third, it's still a good day out for the team. And with Mareczko now having 1-2 stages, I think that their confidence is pretty high, and they're pretty happy to spend time on the front.
He was actually born in Poland, but grew up in Italy. Jakub Mareczko knows his allegiance now to Italy. And indeed, probably moved to Brescia in Italy when he was 5 years of age with his mum. Came up through the ranks with the Willier Trestina squad with the Southeast Pro Cycling as it was then, since 2015. Diminutive figure, just 5'7", and very much in the Caleb Ewan mould. As you said, that distinctive and characteristic sprinting style, perhaps not suiting the feisty when lots of things are happening in the last couple of kilometres. Is that an issue for Caleb Ewan, do you think?
It can be. I think probably more so if the road is smooth and so on, then hanging over the handlebars sprinting is probably not too big a problem. Mareczko seemed to be looking down an awful lot when he's sprinting, which I don't necessarily like, but it certainly seems effective enough, and he's obviously very aerodynamic. He makes himself incredibly small on the in terms of frontal area when he does sprint. But then again, there's a bit of a stretch of the quads there.
Sergei Zvetskov, the Jelly Belly powered by Maxis rider, tried to go in the early break today, which many might have thought was a little bit of a surprise, maybe just trying to pinch some bonus seconds. He'll be looking, I think, for general classification later in the week. Very, very strong climber, and performs with great distinction in the US UCI races. Tour of Utah, Tour of Colorado, very much to the fore in those events already this year. Well, they have them within their sights. It's just stretched out another couple of seconds, but the roads are wide, they are straight, and for all that they roll a little bit, those three riders now very much within the sights of the peloton behind us. Sven van Looy just shaking his hands, a little bit of road buzz perhaps, causing those wrists to go a little bit numb, and the circulation not quite too perfect through to his fingers at this point. And that can happen, isn't it? That's road cycling.
Well, it is road cycling, and it actually comes down to the setup of your handlebars and what shape of handlebars you're using, and depending on your hands really. Obviously, there's a point in your palm where all the nerves are passing through, and if you're resting on that the whole time, your fingers tend to go a bit tingly, and there's only one way to sort that out, and that's shake them loose, basically. Yeah,
and a proper bike fit.
And a proper bike fit.
Always recommended. And indeed, a regular bike fit, not just one for your entire life, because body composition can change, can't it? So regular bike fit's always important.
It's amazing how much it actually changes throughout the season as well, even for the best riders in the world, how just tiny little changes in a crash can cause you to be less flexible, and so on and so on. There's always, and even to a point where you're getting into really good form, then you change your position on the bike ever so slightly, just automatically how you sit on the bike and the way you apply the power into the bike. So actually getting that bike checked out a couple of times a year it's not a bad idea, and certainly I would say at least once a year going into when you start in your winter training, make sure that you're set up in the best possible way, because like I said, everything can change through a season. So just set yourself up properly when you start in your winter training and getting ready for the next season, knowing that you're then in the optimum position.
Well, Willier Trestina are in the optimum position at the moment. It's a solid job being done once more by their team. Massed ranks at the front with Ilya Koshevoy with Luca Raggio just sitting on his tail at the moment. We've seen great work as well from Alex Turin, those three riders. With the assistance indeed of Giuseppe Fonzi's just moved up towards the front, sitting third in line there. The Williams Trestina squad, they deserve a name check. They've been given the, well, they're certainly happy enough to take on the role, I think, because Alex Turin just fourth in line there. The entire team have been enjoying the spoils of victory over the past couple of weeks, not just in this race, but also in the Tour of Tahoe Lake. A mere 15 stage wins, and now he's clocked 15 stage wins in Tour of Tahoe Lake over the last 3 years. Now he's got 3 victories over the last couple of years in the Tour of Hainan. He's moving up onto the tail of Max Walscheid, who sits fourth in line in the most wins in the history of this race. Valentin Iglinski, with his 10 stage victories in the history of Tour of Hainan, has a handy advantage, to say the least. Kenny van Hummel took 7 victories in his participations. Theo Bos 6 victories, and Max Walscheid, as I mentioned, 5 victories in 2016 for Walscheid. Will that be replicated by Jakub Mareczko? Perhaps Aberysturi might be able to infiltrate those numbers, and it's coming down. Well, they're just dangling out there, aren't they? Still sitting at half a minute lead, and when the road is flat, it's a busy style, it's a workmanlike style from Ulysses Alfredo Castillo, but certainly it's committed at this point. Well, now they are starting to show it on their face, aren't they? And he's really pushing hard. The 25-year-old from Mexico, 12th on GC actually in the Tour of Tahoe Lake just a couple of weeks ago, so he's on good form. And had a 7th on a stage of the Larry H. Miller Tour of Utah a couple of months ago, which would have been a major appointment for Jelly Belly.
Well, there's a bit of a snake on the road there. Interestingly enough, though, Preva is not doing any kind of work on the front, and hasn't done for a long period of time. So I wonder whether he's just holding back and potentially thinking of a solo move in the final few kilometers, or whether he's just decided that this is not gonna go all the way into the finish. So I'm just gonna sit here, wait for it, and then help my team out whenever the peloton catches us. But I think that's a bit of a. I certainly know I wouldn't be too happy about it. But here we go and see if the.
Oh, that's not something you see every day, is it? Let's just get a look at that. As the snake is I've got to get over here. I've only got 30 seconds before the punch arrives. That's an altogether more different proposition. I mentioned don't bring your pet dogs to the bike races. Probably don't bring your pet snake either.
No.
Yeah.
More difficult to hold on the lead as well.
Indeed. So just over half a minute lead for the 3 riders out front into the closing stages now of stage 4 of the Tour of Hainan, and the bunch is together. But just as I say it, we're starting to see the attacks coming, and that's because the Team Willier squad are trying to just leave those 3 riders out front at a remove of half a minute. But the pace that they're going at now has just slowed imperceptibly, and that has perhaps encouraged this rider from Attack Team Gusto just to try his luck off the front. That's not Sven van Looy. He's up the road in the breakaway group, so these counter-attacks are going to start coming.
Yeah, it's at that time gap now where it's very much a possibility of bridging. Maybe not alone, but certainly a group of 2 or 3 riders can bridge across to our original breakaway. So I think the peloton needs to be on the vigilant side at the moment.
There's the Danyang Tower. Quite proud of that round here. That's relatively recently built, 57 meters high, 9 stories. Sits out looking down over Danshu City. It's part of the Danyang Forest Park tourist zone. Not of any great interest to these 3 riders out front. Are they going to be visited by that rider from Attack Team Gusto? I think most unlikely he's going to be retained by the peloton, and he's going to have to go into the naughty corner. Just think about what he did. busy effort. Still no sign of the effort on Sven van Looyk's face. He really does cut an impassive figure, and I think he certainly, with any even slight drag, he just seems that little bit stronger than the others. And interesting that Alexander Prevar is either unwilling or unable to make any contribution to this chase. It's an interesting tactical decision.
Yeah, to me it looks more like an unwilling factor there coming into it. It's he's clearly got some sort of an alternative motive with what he's doing at the moment, whether it's, like I said, waiting for the bunch to catch them to help his team out to set up for the sprint, or whether he's just holding off for that sort of 20-second time gap to the bunch and then trying to go on his own. But I think he's going to struggle to get rid of certainly Sven van Looyk. He looks very, very strong at the moment, and that's also quite a punchy character, so getting rid of a rider like that can be fairly difficult.
Not going to be the work of a moment. It's down to 22 seconds. Now we have... He's still hanging on out front, that rider from attack team Gusto. I think he might well conceivably be the first rider to get to the break. He's hanging on manfully, but not making massive progress on getting up to them at the moment. But it's still Castillo piling it on the front. And now Sven van Looyk just rolling through to the front, has to get out of the saddle to do it. So everyone's making the big efforts. Tim Guy, his mouth agape, actually trying to just hoover up the oxygen as best he can to try and fuel those muscles for this committed effort. And just a little bit of a drag up here, and it does drag imperceptibly all the way through to the finish. Not in any way a mountain climb, not a particularly tough sprint, but it just that little, just 1%, 2%, they can take it out of you, especially when you've got close on 190 kilometers in your legs. Yeah,
there's a certain sections of road here where it does drag a fraction, but I mean, we're talking about such small percentages, and the majority of the time not even visible to the eye. So but still, I think there's more the wind that's playing a factor in these final few kilometers.
Yeah, not big wind by any means, but it will they've just turned around into that little bit of a headwind, and you see the flags fluttering on the right-hand side of the road. The breeze is certainly in the faces of those riders, and all of these factors are going to make it very difficult for the riders to hang on. But great effort here from Timothy Guy to try and get across, and great images indeed of him in his pursuit of the three riders. Down to 10 seconds, he's hanging on to that 8 seconds lead over the peloton. He's showing the jersey well.
Yeah, he definitely is. It's a good effort that he's making, but I think it's going to be well, yeah, probably. It will be very difficult to stay clear of the peloton, which is only at 18 seconds now. And I'd say even in the final kilometer or so, a good 10-second gap is quite easy to bridge, actually, for a bunch that's starting to lead out. So I don't think that the bunch is all too worried about these three riders out there now, and Timothy Guy is getting caught by the bunch.
Yeah, 28-year-old Aussie, second year on the team, took a stage win in the Tour of Philippines last year, but it doesn't look like he's going to get stage 4 of the Tour of Hainan. He's retained by the bunch, and it's 14 seconds advantage now with Sven van Looyk, and there really is such a contrast in figure that he cuts between himself and Ulysses Alfredo Castillo. But it all amounts to a similar product in terms of what they're managing to get out on the road. And now the bunch is starting to move around down to the last 5 and a bit kilometers. The team's starting to try and get organized, and you've got that washing machine effect starting to develop. Sitting behind the Willier Trestina squad, they're still happy to let them have it, the Italian teams, in terms of setting the tempo and setting the agenda, but it's getting physical in there, isn't it?
Well, it's starting to get a bit on the physical side of things, but so far everyone is leaving Willier Trestina to do the work on the front. Maybe 1 or 2 riders are thinking about helping out, and there's another attack coming, I think.
More attacks into that left-hander, and riders getting squeezed a little bit on the inside, and all spreading out onto the right-hand side of the road as well. Plenty of room, no problems, and everyone through safely on that occasion. But now we get a complete shift in the focus and the atmosphere at the front of the bunch. Still the Willier Trestina squad. Bardiani CSF moving up, I think, more to try and protect their GC riders and make sure that they stay safe, as we've got riders just jumping across and tagging on to the back of the three breakaway riders, just trying to take a little bit of shelter perhaps before going again. One of the Australian riders?
Yeah, he would have to go again pretty soon though, because the bunch is coming now, and Willier Trestina taking charge on the front with Marechko now on the wheel of his team, as Delco Marseille in the blue, they're moving up on the left hand side as well.
Three riders from the early break and one Mitchelton Scott rider has attacked across to them. They've got a composite group of Australian riders and riders from Asia as well, and the riders from the early break just trying to hang on and be the last men standing as best they can. Castillo perhaps a little bit annoyed that he's got this counter-attacker. Not annoyed, what am I saying? He's just desperately trying to take advantage of that. He's certainly going to be the last man standing from the breakaway group, as Prevar and Van Looy have been cast aside and pushed back into the bunch. The bunch still being led by the Willier Trestina squad. The blue of Delco Marseille Provence moving up to try and get their position, their sprinter Martin Lass into perfect order at the front end. Inside 4 kilometers to go now. Another right-hander is made, and wide open boulevards not testing these riders in terms of the technical effort, and it's stretched relatively thin. Tough for many of the riders to move up, but still enough of the teams still ready to get involved.
Well, it just shows how even a big wide corner like the one we've just gone through stretched the bunch out, and now we're on to that final stretch of road. This is one road now going all the way into the finish line, and it is absolutely dead straight. So it's going to come down to how much horsepower these guys have got left. The Willier Trestina team, having spent all day on the front, have they got enough in the legs to keep the pace high enough, as they are getting challenged by the HR Block team, and Delco Marseille are sitting up there as well. Again, very well organised with Lars on the wheel there in the green jersey.
Well, there's Marechko. He's the winner of 2 stages already in this race. Hasn't been lower than second, and only a win will be of any interest to him. To his immediate left in the green points jersey, Martin Lass. He's got the blue colours of his Delco Marseille Provence squad sitting on the front and trying to move up to take position. The H&R Block Pro Cycling team are interested in trying to get involved in this one. And Marc-Antoine Nadon was 4th in yesterday's stage, so watch out for their sprinter to see can they propel him to victory. Inside 3 kilometers to go. A shift over to the left-hand side of the road.
Challenge is coming on the left-hand side of the road, as you just said, but the best placed team for me right now is the Delco Marseille guys. They're sitting very much near the front, but not actually taking any wind whatsoever, and that's the Eyes Away team coming up on the left in the black depth.
Interesting counter-attack here from Dominguez of the K Look cycling team as he attempts to go solo, but that's never going to work. And we've got a series of drag races taking part.
Vorarlberg coming up.
The Vorarlberg squad, they've got Fabian Lienhardt, did a solid job in the sprint yesterday. Good top 10 finish for him. Vitaly Butz is trying to move up into position as well. You see the Mountains jersey, perhaps to do a job for his team. He's had a relatively quiet afternoon after getting the sprint out of the way.
See, I think the Eyes Away team now has just about saying that they're sitting over on the left-hand side, taking too much wind for no apparent reason. All of a sudden, then they're moving across to the right, and as long as you're sitting very close to the other teams, you're actually getting a fair amount of shelter, but very much a drag race of who's who and who's got legs at the moment.
Well,
2 kilometers
to go. Marechko, yeah, 2 kilometers to go. Marechko, how low he gets over the bike, what a small figure he cuts on the bike, and he's got Jurgen Jupa who's assisting him, and that's the usual pattern we've seen, but they've got plenty of riders still at the front. That's good news for Willier Trestina.
Well, they only got 2 riders now ahead of Marechko, so this is not ideal for them with 1.7 kilometers to go, so this is going to have to be a very, very long turn. As we got an attack coming on the left-hand side. Big attack.
That's a big move, and they set it up, didn't they? They got it organised as early as they could. Vorarlberg, and it's Fabian Lienhardt, who was top 10 finish yesterday, has decided to try and pull a fast one here. Interesting change of tactics for them. The Swiss national squad all over this one.
Yeah, national team coming up there, and Ukio as well has got put one rider in there, as it's Jake Cooper, New Zealand champion, on the front there now for Eyes Away.
Well, Joe Cooper has done great work over the first couple of days in closing down gaps, and it doesn't look as if this one is going to work out for Lienhart. Swiss national team do have sprinting options as well, though, in the back end of this. Dylan Page, a couple with 3 top 10 finishes already in and under the kite. Inside a kilometre to go. It's Joe Cooper in those national champions colours of...
Zuppa Maresco in perfect position there on the back of the ISOWay team.
Yep, so look at Jakub Mareczko in that yellow jersey. It's tough to pick out because Juga Jupa is providing plenty of shelter for him. The Bardiani team just behind there. The green jersey of Martin Lass has the blue jerseys of Delco Marseille Provence to look out for him. Isoway trying to stomp on the pedals inside 500 meters to go. Mareczko looks to be perfectly presented here. Lass is going to try and surf the wheel of the yellow jersey through to the finish. Zupa is going to set this one up. Inside 300 meters remaining on stage 4. Here comes Mareczko.
Long sprint.
Here comes Mareczko. He's going for the big one. He's going for the long one. He gets low over the bars, and Lass is going to try and leave it to the last moment. He's not going to get there. Mareczko is going to get his hands in the air. All too easy once more. It's the hatch trick for Jakub Mareczko. He takes his 3rd victory in the Tour of Hainan. Jakub Mareczko, and they punch the air at the back of the bunch after the great work done by Willier Trestina all afternoon. It is once again the perfect scenario for Willier Trestina as Jakub Mareczko takes victory on stage 4.
Impressive sprint there by Jakub Mareczko, but what a really a well-timed lead out as well by Jupa, and just how calm he stayed for as long as possible. Just waited for the other teams to start challenge, and then stepped out into the wind and opened up his sprint. Had the power as well to go long, but Mareczko, wow, he came off the wheel of Zupa there with 275 meters to the line, and that's not easy when it's such a fast sprint as well. It looked like it was slightly downhill, and yeah, once he got on the pedals first, and he was able to hold what he had, and that was super impressive stuff for Jakub Mareczko, who's extended his win number to 11 victories in 2017, including an overall success in Tour of Taihu Lake, and he has now got 10 wins in Asia, 9 in the last 19 days. It's a pretty good return, isn't it, for Jakub Mareczko? And now they're starting to get used to it, aren't they? Let's review the finish again. Jupa setting him up perfectly. Jupa there, 300 meters to go, 275, and just after that, about 250, Mareczko actually hits out and gets a bit of a gap on last straight away. But the way he's sprinting at the moment just keeps on accelerating all the way to the finish line. Wasn't even challenged.
Perfect stuff for Jakub Mareczko. He's going to head to the podium for a 3rd successive day, and we're going to see that a little bit after these. Well, the Willier team will celebrate once more. It's been an epic journey to Tour of Hainan once more. They came with the big reputation as the pro-continental team from Italy, and they have delivered in spades so far, haven't they? 2nd place finish in stage 1, the only blemish so far for Jakub Mareczko. Blemish in relative terms, isn't it? 3 victories in succession after that. You get the overhead shot there, you see his lengths clear, and Martin Lass never in position to even think about getting past. Indeed, he's challenged for 2nd place by Jacopo, and Simeon from the Bardiani CSF squad getting up, leading his teammate through for 3rd place.
It always puzzles me a bit when you see a team coming towards the finish with 3 or 4 riders like Bardiani and Delco Marseille have done again today. It just clearly shows that they're not really working as a team. They're all kind of there to sprint for themselves. You should never have that amount of riders left come towards the line. Commit everything to one rider and do the sprint properly. Yeah,
plenty of time to turn off his computer and surveyed the numbers as he went across the line. That's just how comfortable that sprint finish was for Jakub Mareczko. There's confirmation of the finishing positions at the end of stage 4, with Mareczko getting the victory ahead of Martin Lass, Anthony Jacopo in 3rd position, Paolo Simeon. Emils Lipin's getting up for a nice 5th place finish for Delco Marseille Provence. They're packing well at the top in the top 10. Maranesi Kulik Abrasturi is relegated back to 8th position after his performances in the first stage and yesterday. And scrolling down through the top 20, plenty of riders there who believe that they can come up with a better finish, but it's Mareczko that gets the hat-trick. 3-stage victories in succession. Another victory and another visit to the podium for Mareczko. He heads